Welcome. I'm Russell Morris, the head of HR here at the Conference Board, and today I'm your host as we bring you the very best of our conference on recruiting human capital for the competitive edge. Today we have brought you three of our best speakers from that conference to share their insights and to engage you in the best of the conference and those ideas. Okay, if I can get this technology working today. We're going to be focusing on a case study with Stacy Van Meter of Deluxe, who's really going to be talking about the employee brand and meeting employees where they live, and really how they've redesigned their talent acquisition to respond to the candidate experience in the marketplace. We also have two speakers, Brandon Stevens and Monica Canto, who are going to be talking about their efforts to drive their business forward through inclusion and diversity and how they connect that to their brand. It's a very exciting show. And we asked you all to tell us what you wanted in advance. And what we heard from that survey is that you were interested in how to recruit from all the generations and not break the bank. How to tie your competitive edge and your strategic goals to your recruiting efforts, how you measure that with your analytics, and how you might use automation and technology to drive these processes. So we've got a lot to cover. We're going to break it up into 3 sessions. We're going to be involving you in conversation all along. So let me tell you how you can make the most out of this webcast. First, ask questions. Please use the chat box at the bottom of your screen. Type it in and I will make sure that we interject that into the conversation. Secondly, you can download the presentation using the file download pod at the bottom center of your screen. You can view this full screen if you'd like by clicking on the 4 arrows in the top right-hand corner of the screen. We will ask you to complete the brief evaluation at the end of the webcast, so we can incorporate your feedback into future programs. And of course, we encourage you to share this with your colleagues as this will be available on demand on our website. Some of you are joining and would like to earn credits for this, either through HRCI, SHRM, or some other form. Please stay online for the entire webcast. You will be asked to fill in your name and your email address and specify who you would like credits from. And as soon as we're done with the webcast, that will get processed and you'll get notified of your credits. So with that housekeeping out of the way, and again, I just want to put in a pitch. It's really helpful if you ask your questions because our speakers are here to want to engage with you. We will, and it's best to tailor our message as best as we can to you. So start thinking now about your questions. Start entering them in now. It's okay. We'll integrate them into the webcast. So let me briefly introduce our presenters so that we can jump right in and hear their stories. Stacy Van Meter is the Vice President of Talent Acquisition and Employment Brand at Deluxe Corporation. Stacy's a very popular speaker with years of experience as a marketer and a recruiter. She's been at Deluxe for several years. Before that, she was at 3M and United Health Group. We have Brandon Stevens from Rockwell Automation. You probably get that every once in a while.
Quite a bit, actually.
Where he's University Relations Manager. Brandon has worked with Whirlpool, with City Year, and is really driving the diversity efforts and recruiting efforts at Rockwell Automation. And then Monica Canto is the Vice President of Employer Branding and Talent Acquisition at PVH Corporation. Many of you probably better know PVH by its brands, Calvin Klein and Tommy Hilfiger, et cetera. Monica's been with PVH in a variety of roles, starting in the business, I think, and then moving into HR and now into a center of expertise, really driving a workplace where people want to be their best, right?
Absolutely.
So it's going to be an exciting panel, I think, with lots of cool stories, and we want to jump right into it. So I am going to turn it over to Stacy to tell us a bit about Deluxe's journey and what they've been doing.
Excellent, thank you.
And I actually am coming to you. I'm the remote individual here in Minnesota, looking out at my 2 to 3 inches of snow in April. So it's a little difficult, but I want to jump right into my slides because I understand I have around 15 to 20 minutes, and would like to forward. Could we advance those slides? The first. Thank you. And I can actually advance them myself. So look at that. I can actually do it myself. I did present for you guys, I think last year. Doing this remote and sitting down is difficult, not my style. I'm usually one to be up and jumping around and using my hands a lot. But what I will tell you, anyone in the audience, is as we go through this information, I am really open and accessible. If you have questions, or would like to see some of the slides or data that I have, I'm more than willing to share this information. So what we're going to do is talk a little bit about the title of this particular presentation. Did have to do with millennials and branding and how to attract them, but it actually is much more than millennials. It's really all of our constituents when we get to recruiting. So I want to talk a little bit about what we're doing from a brand and marketing perspective, but also what we've been doing to really grow our recruiters' capabilities so that they are seen as true consultants by our hiring managers. And as I start that, what I've done internally here is try to educate our leaders on what's happening in the marketplace. We have this incredible time. Sometimes you will hear people say it's a second war for talent. I don't like that. I think it's actually might be more considered a race for relationships. We have one of the lowest unemployment rates, and we have this crazy competition and really this speed to hire. I'm sure many of you are faced with recruiters that come back and say, well, we were all ready to make an offer, but the person already had one or maybe more offers. So then we talk internally about what we can do, what levers can we pull when we have a marketplace like this. And things that come up typically are employer branding and marketing, candidate experience, hiring for potential, and how we go after passive candidates when we don't have people applying to our roles. So I will say my introduction was teed up as I've got some background in marketing. I've worked for different large companies here in Minnesota like 3M, United Healthcare, West Publishing, but I am an entrepreneur at heart. My background is actually not in recruiting or HR. It's on the business side with building e-commerce teams and marketing teams. And when I came here to Deluxe, I actually didn't think that I would be here longer than 2 or 3 years to help transform this, 100-year-old check printing company into a digital space to be able to appeal to people. And here I am, still here 9 years later, which actually says a lot to the culture of Deluxe. So many of you are aware, the screen that's up here right now, we're talking about the unemployment rate. None of this is new. For us, what's important is our IT jobs, our cybersecurity. We're hiring many data scientists, and you look at that, the job with negative unemployment. I talked about the intense competition and speed. The demographic shifts, that's where the millennials come in, and many of them making more moves than we've seen other generations do in the past. And then I've got a screen that actually talks a little bit about those levers that we pull, the talent spectrum. And I think a lot of us are trying to figure out how we attract and brand our messages when it comes to passive talent. And I want to jump into that a little bit later. With employment branding, I would hope that maybe some of you in preparation for this call went out and looked a little bit about, what are the companies, the speakers today, what are their companies doing? What I can tell you is that for 9 years here at Deluxe, we have really been doing what I would say it all comes down to thinking different, innovating in the talent acquisition space. And my apologies for that phone you might hear ringing there. And let me give you an example. One of the things that we did at the very beginning 9 years ago was we said we need to appeal to a different kind of talent, digital talent. And there happened to be a job description for a finance person laying on my desk next to a flip cam. That's going to date me. And I looked at the job description for the finance person and said, this is so boring. I need to think of a different way to reach people. And with the flip cam, it was an aha moment, an innovation. Why don't we just ask the hiring managers to talk about their role? What's the culture like in their department? How do we get our leaders involved in recruiting that way? I've got brand ambassadors listed here. That could be a discussion unto itself. And we're doing a lot of work to get our net promoters internally up to speed on our roles and how to help us promote our roles, our open positions. And our hiring managers, you know, when it comes to team development and management with our hiring managers, we sit down with them one-on-one and talk about their LinkedIn profile, the importance of that. We talk about Glassdoor and how do they respond when candidates want to know about some of our ratings. So we're really involved with our hiring manager teams. And then passive candidates is, again, it's just a really big topic right now. I just got out of a staff meeting with my team, and we talk about how we work with our leaders to understand that many times a passive candidate will show up for interview and actually even their body language with their arms crossed or the questions that they're asking. If a hiring manager doesn't truly understand that a passive candidate can show up differently and be interviewing us, that particular interview might go drastically wrong. They're going to have questions. They may not have a resume, and they're going to be selective about the times. Oftentimes, we'll tell our hiring managers to meet them at a coffee shop, after work, before work, something that fits their schedule. And then another lever that we're really using right now is hiring for potential. The practice has been for so many years in recruiting to check the box. I've got a list of requirements that I need, and the individuals, I'm only going to look at individuals that check my boxes. Years of experience, technology, whatever it might be. And we need to move, especially with this marketplace, towards hiring for potential. What that means is I've got to be flexible. If a recruiter goes into a hiring manager and they have a strategy meeting where they're discussing the role, we've got to talk about what are the things you're willing to give on. We might not find everything or check every box, and we need to be looking at people that fit with our culture, our values. Are they trainable? It's a whole different world when it comes to hiring for potential. And then candidate experience. We're one of the first companies to actually apply for the Candidate Experience Awards and did win for 4 years in a row. Then for 2 years we did not win, and then this year we won again. So what that means is we're putting a lot of thought, a lot of effort, a lot of planning into our candidate experience. 9 years ago, when we started this venture, I asked everyone in talent acquisition and HR and even our hiring managers to not call them candidates. I say them, but they really are customers. Anyone who comes through your pipeline, whether it's even just an applicant and they never even talk to a recruiter or a hiring manager, they are your customer. They may very well buy your products and services. They will certainly talk about their experience with your company. So if we start thinking, putting that in our brains as customer, we will treat them different. There are a whole host of different things that we're doing to help us understand what our customers are feeling when they interact with us. One thing I would ask you to do is to go out and look at our career site. We just recently put a front and center notation about candidate experience and said to people, you know, if you have questions, concerns, maybe you weren't treated appropriately, my phone number and my name, my email address is out there. And I said, I want to know. Contact me. I'm the leader of this organization, and it's important to me that you're um, treated great, frankly, even if you, especially if you don't get the job. We do what's called an extreme candidate makeover quarterly, because we know that people who even don't come to work for us, it's important that we engage them. So we set up a sort of contest, if you will, where people who are in the market for a new job can come in, if they win this extreme candidate makeover, can come in with us, and we sit down and go through their resume. We talk with them about how to interview, and really answer all kind of questions for them. But that's us engaging in our community and giving back, which is really actually quite important. This slide is just sort of it gives you kind of an overview of some of the things that I've been talking about. You can see the extreme candidate makeover there. We are active on almost every social media channel. And we monitor them very closely in terms of which ones we're getting return on. We don't spend a great deal of money. We hired, when we first started, again, back in 2009, we hired an intern as our social media marketing individual, and that's actually grown into a full-time role. So we have an individual on our team doing a lot of our hiring manager video, actually all of our hiring manager videos. You don't need to hire an external firm to do that stuff. He is doing our social media management. So really, you boil it down to it's sort of the new digital librarian. His job, he captures our culture, whether it's locally here in Minnesota or at sites across the U.S. We've got a hashtag Life at Deluxe, where we have people send us pictures and video of what they're doing at work, for work, whether it's fun or actual work, and we post those and share that. So people, when they think about coming to work, especially passive people, they're going to do their research and want to figure out what kind of company we are. You can find loads of data online. I will give you an example of one way that we use, again, I'm going to go back to innovation. So we think about things very different. When Pinterest first came out, and many of you may know Pinterest as, oh yeah, it's that place that you go and post wedding dresses or vacation ideas. It's really a bulletin board, right? So it's a social media bulletin board where you can post different things. We tried hard to think about, oh, how do we use this technology in recruiting? And some people, there are a few people that went out and tried different projects or programs for recruiting. But for us, it came down to, well, the board is really to create a space where you accumulate research and data and information to share. So for us, the way that we use it is we have recruiters that are focused on different areas: finance, IT, digital analytics, and they own a board. So our digital analytics recruiter owns that board and populates that board based on things that they go out and find, because it's part of their job is to understand what's going on in that space. So there may be infographics out there around how much, data analytics people are paid. Where do they live online? What are the blogs that they visit? And think about how valuable that is when a recruiter shows up to a hiring strategy meeting, or whatever you might call it, an intake meeting, and they say to the hiring manager, so I want to show you this board I've got. I've got a lot of different information on the data analytics world. And the hiring manager says, wow, you as my recruiter really understand what I'm after. Can I get access to this thing? So, it's thinking about all of the social information in a different way. And again, I'm going to go back to not a lot of money. This stuff can be done by your current recruiters if they have a social bent or they really understand online. It could be done by an intern. And my first thought when I came on board was, we're not going to spend a lot of money on this. We're going to bootstrap and do it on our own. This is a screenshot of one of our job descriptions. I'm really proud of this. Our job descriptions include video, either our culture video up front and center if we don't have a hiring manager video. And maybe when this is over, we can send to the audience a link for one that has a hiring manager video because it's actually pretty powerful. So as a candidate, as a customer, I would go out and find this job. I can see a traditional list of the requirements, a traditional job posting, if you will, there. But front and center, I see a video. On the left-hand side, what I see, that's important for us because we're transparent and we want our customers to connect with us, is I see the recruiter. And I can contact the recruiter. You've got a lot of people today that don't want to apply, and they may be on the edge of passive. They may want to research and find out who works at that organization. But this is a great way I can actually just say, look, Margie Clark is the recruiter. I'm going to send her a note and say, you know what? I don't have all the experience, but would you mind letting me know where you are with the role? And I will tell you that each of our recruiters will respond to people. You've also got, you see that there's a map. Yes, and I'm probably running short on time, so I'm going to keep running here, but there's a map. So I'd encourage people to go out and take a look at some of our job postings. This is another job posting that is called an advanced job description, what we found with our high volume roles. And again, this appeals to millennials. So millennials weren't reading into that stuff. They love the video, but when they see a job description like this, it's visual. Okay. Glassdoor is Glassdoor, as you all know, it can be good, it can be bad. This particular screenshot is actually an internal slide that I was using to sell our Glassdoor partnership. But what I would say about Glassdoor is that we educate our hiring managers on how to respond to candidates who are asking about our ratings. And I'm not going to go into that one or this one because those are internal. I will say that this deck that's showing here is a little different than the one that we were originally going to use, but we're rolling with it. So some of this stuff is our internal work. So what we missed there, we missed a few things from the deck we were going to use, like an example of one of our videos. But I think we can get that to people afterwards. And then we missed a chunk of information on what we're doing to educate, train our recruiters on how to be consultants. And what I think I will leave you with is a couple of key things that we're doing with those recruiters. So the recruiters on my staff are so much more than a pair of hands. And what I mean by a pair of hands is they're not a recruiter that will walk into a hiring strategy meeting and say, this is a great role, I'll fill it for you, no problem. What they will do is they will walk into a hiring strategy meeting and they will say, I have done a lot of research. I want to be able to show you some of this. You're looking to hire a data analytics person at $80,000 in California, and I don't think that's going to happen. So let's walk through the data, maybe a supply and demand report, maybe the Pinterest boards, and then let's have a consultation about where we need to go with the role. Okay? So with that, I'll flip it back, and I will ask anyone who has questions afterwards to certainly contact me. I'm absolutely open to that.
Thanks so much, Stacy. I think we do have the video for you. Can we play that video?
Yeah, you sure could. This is an example of a hiring manager video, so this doesn't entirely replace the job description, but let's show it. And because that's the wrong deck, they may not have, oh. There you go.
Hi, my name is Sue Anderson. I'm the Director of Customer Experience here at Deluxe. We're looking for a UX architect to join our really exciting user experience team. I really look for user experience professionals who are generalists, and that's somebody who can, really understand, work with stakeholders on understanding what the problem is that they're trying to solve, what type of research it is that they need to do, actually do the research themselves, and then turn it into strategies, wireframes, and designs that articulate the things that we've learned from our customers. It's one of those positions where you're really balancing understanding business needs and with what customers need, and turning into really exciting experiences that brings the results that we're looking for. In addition to that, I'd like a UX architect to be very collaborative, exciting, creative, able to deal with ambiguities and turn it into something that is meaningful and is exciting to our customers. We get to spend a lot of time with small businesses, and if that's something that you're interested, even better, because the more that we spend time with small business, the more we become very passionate about them, and we really want to help them. So it's a great opportunity, and we have a lot of really fun people that we work with, and we can really make things happen at Deluxe. So if this sounds exciting to you, come and visit us at jobs.deluxe.com and send us your application.
That's terrific, Stacy. Thanks for sharing that. I know, encourage everyone, if they have questions of Stacy, to put them in the box. I know we've been listening and watching, and there are some questions we know we have for you. So why don't we start? Monica, you had a question for Stacy?
Yeah, so two things, Stacy. First of all, thank you very much for sharing all this information. When you were talking about the candidate experience, you brought me a good insight that, I don't remember who said about it, but it was something about people don't necessarily remember what you say, but they always remember how you make them feel. So when you were talking about all the work that you have done with candidate experience, just an applause for you, which I think that's great. One thing that I wanted to ask you is, I know that you were going to talk upon what are you doing to educate recruiters. However, I was thinking, what is like the key recommendation that you will have for us around training hiring managers? When you talk, I think that you talk about hiring managers being very engaged and very involved with the process. And I'm just wondering, what is the recipe? What do you do to bring your hiring managers engaged?
Right. It's a great question, and it's taken us a long time. I think many of you are dealing with hiring managers that have done something the same way forever. And the biggest thing I can say is you need to educate them on the marketplace. Use data. Tell them where we are with candidates. What I did is I went back and I looked at the data. 10 years ago, how many people applied to our roles versus today? It's a dramatic cliff. When people aren't applying to our roles, how do we find them? So it's making sure they understand that we don't just post roles, what actually happens. So the marketplace and what we do to show up, but we also send them, when we post a job, we sometimes do A/B testing on a job description, on a job title. We may put it up one way, we're not getting a good response, we may do another. We also do marketing bit.lys, so the shortened link to a job description. We ask our hiring managers, and if they don't know, we train them, that they share the link to the job opening along with a little marketing blurb on their own LinkedIn profile or any other social sites that they have.
That's great. Thank you. Thanks for sharing, Stacy. Thank you very much.
So, Stacy, one of our listeners is wondering, how many FTE are we talking about? I mean, how big is your team here
Sure.
in terms of recruiters, sourcers, marketing partners?
Yep. We, at Deluxe, we hire about 1,400 people a year. 80% of those hires are high volume. And ask any leader, and you're going to say their team is too small, but my team is too small. We have 4 professional level recruiters. We have 4 high volume recruiters. We have a couple of coordinators, an operations person, and our marketing person. Now, our load has gotten so high recently that we've had to pull in some sourcers, contract sourcers that understand and know our business really well. And I will say that we do a lot of our own recruiting. We, at one point over this 9-year period, we were spending more than $2.5 million on third-party recruiters. And with focused effort on having the kind of recruiter that could do what a third party would, we lowered that spend to under $200,000 in a year.
Wow. That's very impressive. And I'm still staggering under that. That's really great. Brandon, you had a question?
Yeah. Hey, Stacy, how are you?
Hey, good.
Good. Great content, by the way. Just a quick question for you, and I'd imagine, so converse to the question Monica asked around the hiring managers. What work and efforts went into place specifically to get the recruiters to transition from this kind of plug and play type of model, which we all are familiar with, to now this talent advisor? I forget the coin you said earlier around their roles. Can you tell us a little bit about the process,
Sure.
the prep? How long was that process, and where did you start from?
Absolutely. Obviously, there were some exits over time. People that did not have I mean, people need to have a passion. If you work in this department, you have got to have two things in spades: curiosity and passion. When I interview people for a recruiter role, I work more on that upfront piece, and you would be amazed when you interview a recruiter and you say, well, all right, tell me about you've got this new job landed on your desk. What do you do? They jump right into, well, I meet with the hiring manager. But there's so much that should happen before that. And when I get someone who understands that and is passionate about the research and the understanding about how to consult with the hiring manager, then I know I have someone that I can work with.
Awesome. Thank you.
That's terrific, Stacy. Now, we're going to ask you to hold on a second because we're going to have more questions at the end, but I want to make sure that we get every story in today and create a bridge across these three presentations. So I'm going to turn it over to Brandon now, and so that we can learn a bit more about their work at Rockwell that has won them this big award.
Yep. Awesome. Thank you. And I think it's a perfect segue. Stacey, kudos to you. You kind of teed me up a little bit, so thank you. So, of course, and before I jump in, you can't talk about hiring without first talking about the hot topic, which is diversity, right? And so we all are plagued or stressed and challenged to better understand how do you crack that code. And there's no magic wand. There's no wizard that solves for that. Every organization does it and tackles it differently. So I'll talk a little bit about the journey that Rockwell Automation has been on for the past, I've got over 10 years now, and recently starting to get some true wins from those efforts. Without going too deep, I want to start off with a video, so I'll just cue you guys in the room there.
Having a culture of inclusion within Rockwell Automation is going to ensure that we have a diverse pool of thinkers and diverse teams, quite simply, make better decisions. It has to start from top down. So I expect all of my leaders, and I hold myself accountable for living within that culture of inclusion.
I truly feel like I work in partnership with the men on the leadership team and our CEO, Blake. It's truly a shared accountability. And when we started to understand that white male privilege was real and that had to be addressed, only then were we truly able to drive substantive cultural change in our organization. The core elements of our culture of inclusion strategy are threefold, really. It's first of all about awareness and learning. Second of all, understanding and removing barriers. And thirdly, creating differentiation. Truly creating a workplace where the very best talent want to come to work and stay.
Well, oftentimes always learn that you should treat everyone like the golden rule, which is treat people how you want to be treated. But really, we've learned the platinum rule, which we really have to treat people how they want to be treated. And that's different. It's not a one-size-fits-all, and you really have to understand that different people at different ages, different genders, different people of color, all have different ways that they're wanting to engage at work and be included.
And we know that a lot of the emerging talent that's there isn't what it looked like 15, 20 years ago. And so in order for Rockwell to be a place where they feel comfortable and feel at home and want to make it their own, we have to make sure that we're reflecting the same thing to them.
You can only get so far if you're
having these conversations and talking about these challenges only with fellow females. But once you include those advocates and those white male allies into these conversations, I think that that's where you're going to see the most progress and the most positive impact then.
Growing up, one of the closest people in my life to me is my mom. She worked in manufacturing. And when I heard her stories when she'd come home from work about the challenges she saw in manufacturing, I vowed to not be part of that problem, but part of the solution. But in a short 5 years, I've seen it get pushed not only through our organization from the top down, I've seen it become pervasive and part of our culture. It's a conversation everybody has early and often.
Creating a culture of inclusion is important for us because we want to be able to draw from the broadest possible talent pool. And once we have a diverse set of employees, for everyone to not only feel like they can do their best work, but they want to do their best work because they're highly engaged and they're in a place where they're having fun as well as getting good work done.
So what you saw there, and I want to just call out, go to the next slide. Hold on a second. There we go. All right. I figured it out. So what you saw there, and I probably should have warned you guys before we kicked off on that video, there were three things that jumped out, at least to me, and I watch it every time I pick up something new. We have language around white men, and I want to break that down so that folks don't walk away better understanding what that means and why we use that language the way we do. It's not intended to be derogatory by any stretch. The intention is to raise awareness around the organization on many of the leaders within our organization and the bias that comes with that we may or may not be aware of. So if in our organization we have about 22,000 employees worldwide, we sit across 80 different countries. However, the majority of our leadership roles are managed by white men. And so what we saw on the back end was the Friends and Family program. So if majority of our leaders are white men, inherently what we found from our requisitions that a lot of the roles were being filled by folks that looked like white men through and through. So through relationships and networking and over and over. And so what we wanted to do is really break down why that was happening, for one, and then try to drive education on what it meant to change some of that behavior. And the first step for us was, and you heard it in the video, was it's kind of a sandwich approach, which was this top-down, bottom-up approach. Starting with our leaders, inclusive of our inclusion change teams, and I'll talk about those in a little bit, netting our culture transformation, and then lastly, our employee resource groups. And so we know many organizations may have all of those elements embedded in their culture. However, what we wanted to really do is start at the top. And I think I heard Stacy say it earlier around what's the culture needed. And so for us to hire and retain top talent, we certainly need to take a look at the culture that we had to be able to truly attract not only people of color, women, underrepresented minority groups, our folks from the LGBT community, as well as our disabled individuals. And so our journey has been going on for quite some time. And so I'll just read off a few quick stats here. We kicked off this White Men is Full Diversity Partners. And truly what that is it's a boot camp for a few days in which we take our top leaders of different areas within our organization for a few days. And we talk about really tough conversations that you largely don't talk about in the workplace. And that's everything from the injustice that happens across the globe that we see in the U.S. around shootings, if you will, perhaps targeting African-American men. And we talk about how that penetrates you and how you live with that on a day-to-day basis. Conversely, we talk about how some of those issues may impact one's ability to show up fully in the workplace. And so we can't negate how outside influences drive actions in the workplace. And so what we really wanted to do is tear down those barriers and have a safe place to talk about outside influences. And so with that, order steps on how many of our leaders, predominantly white men, may effectively lead teams that may be diverse. So you may or may not understand some of those challenges. So now you do, or now you have visibility into that. And so how does that now order your steps? So to date, and this is a little dated, about 900 of our leaders have gone through the training, 3,500 employees have attended, and over 600 of our leaders have attended, over the course of the past 3 years. So our intention over time is to have 100% participation of all leadership across the board. Step 2 was removing and understanding those barriers. So that was the build of our inclusion teams. Currently, we have about 225 actively employees who are charged with being change agents with respect to inclusion and diversity. And then lastly, creating differentiation. And so that's more of the prominence. And so how do we tell our story? How do we put at the end of our job descriptions and our careers website that we have been recognized for some of the great work we're doing in diversity? And so with that, our COI, our Culture of Inclusion roadmap or journey it's a 3-year roadmap, and we're still on that journey, I should say. It's multifaceted, starting with a strategic framework and metrics around inclusion. So of course we had to take a bench on where we were and where we had gaps. And of course we knew it was at the highest level of our organization, specifically around people of color and women. Develop of our inclusion leaders and inclusion teams. We really wanted to tackle this notion of unconscious bias and what did that mean? And really that was an opportunity for us to educate the organization on how do we remove some of those barriers and address unconscious bias. We talk about it all the time. We hear about it in blogs. But what does it really mean with respect to a Midwest organization that sells B2B is not a household name? So those things show up a little differently. Employment value proposition. So what's the return from our employees? And then lastly, our talent management, succession pipelining, and planning. And so of course we recognize that there's a gap at the highest level of our organization. So how do we remove those barriers to make sure we're placing the right people, digging back into the organization and move those managers up to VP and director roles? So as you can see, I won't read off all the metrics here on the far right side of your screen here, but as you can see, we've had some significant gain across the board at the executive level, director level, of both women and people of color. What I don't want to leave everyone on the line thinking that we've cracked the code. That is certainly not the case. This work continues. These numbers look great. However, what I don't show here is where we started from. So 76% increased by the executive level, and I don't have the numbers in front of me. That could have meant that we had one, right? So I want to be really clear that we're not embellishing on the gains and the increases here, and the work certainly still continues. So quickly, exploring unconscious bias. I'm probably sure we're at time, but I really want to make sure we get to questions here and give Monica some time. But 3 things that we put in place, and one I've already spoken about, which is unconscious and inclusive interviewing panels. And so similar to what you talked about a little bit, Stacy, what we've done is really take a step back and look at if we have majority of our leaders making the decisions and those individuals happen to be white men, and how can we put a tactic in place to make sure we are balancing what those interview slates look like. So it's less of the interviewees, it's really more of those that are making the hiring decisions. We really wanted to get after making sure that those individuals that show up for a director or VP or manager roles is not a panel of all white men or all white women or all black men for that matter. And that we've diversified the folks that are saying yes or no. And then lastly, moving to our unconscious and inclusive training, and really dispelling what some of those myths one may have around hiring someone of a different race, ethnicity, or of the LGBT community or disabled. And then finally wrapping up with that white men as full diversity partners or allies, which that training continues and is fairly pervasive in our organization. So through those efforts, we've had a really significant gain in our last year, I should say, which is the recipient of our 2017 Catalyst Award. And so for us, it was a huge win. Rockwell is a business-to-business organization. You won't hear about us on any TVs or billboards. However, those that are working in automotive organizations or automation organizations or engineering, you will hear about our product and technology. So for us to really get after diverse talent, we really wanted to make sure we could speak to the prominence in the work that we're doing. And so the Catalyst Award was a great way for us to really promote that. I'll end here before I go into too much detail, but in short, through this work, of course, most often it's usually targeting the highest level of our organization. So folks at the VP and SVP and director levels largely have these tools available at their fingertips. What we wanted to do is make sure that those tools were available across the organization. And so this is a quick screenshot of how those tools sit available to all employees at Rockwell that want to be aware of their own bias per se. Not only that, but to really tap and dig into some of those things that may or may not have been at their fingertips before. And so I'll end with this, and I want to just move to some of our questions and give Monica some time. But in short, our biggest goal was to allow for people of any gender, race, ethnicity to bring their whole selves to work. A lot of organizations speak about it, and we did for a number of years, but we really wanted to dispel what it meant to work for a Midwest organization that was engineering. So traditionally, that's suits and hard hats and the good old boys club, and we go golfing every day. However, we find that not to be true when we talk about hiring earlier career individuals into our organization. Time and time again, and I'm pretty sure you guys face it as well, the number one question we receive from candidates of all demographic or background is, tell me about your culture. Tell me about the leadership makeup. How diverse is it? How many women are at the top of our organization? And unfortunately, we didn't have a good answer. We didn't have a great story there. And so that started to add to the muddled waters and being able to not only attract but retain top talent in our organization. We can't continuously go to Atlanta or our HBCUs, historically black universities and colleges, and expect that we're going to get the creme de la creme, bring them to a Midwest organization, and not have people that look like them. So we recognize that. I recognize that as an African-American male. And so that's been a little bit of our narrative, making sure we're being real and honest about some of those challenges that we have and being transparent to those candidates in advance. So our goal is truly just to share with you, hey, these are our numbers. This is where we are. This is our journey. We recognize it to be a gap. We're working through it and on it. However, you can help us with that. And so we would never want to pull the wool over anybody's eyes and allow for them to get to our organization and without understanding what some of our challenges are.
Great. Thank you so much, Brandon. I'm going to ask you in the audience to enter your questions, but we're going to address the questions for both of them after we've talked to Monica, because Brandon, you've got a great story of a B2B. Hard to have that kind of profile because people don't know Rockwell, right, and most people. But then you turn to a consumer-driven company that's marketing is a job number one, right? Let me try that again. Is job number one. So Monica, talk to us about PVH and how you've integrated these stories into the branding that you all are so famous for.
Yeah, so thank you very much, and thanks. I feel very lucky to be here, sitting down, sharing the stage with such wonderful peers. So I think I will start saying I'm part of the talent management team in PVH Corp. I used to do talent acquisition 2 years ago, and I come from Mexico. I was overseeing Latin America. So I always like to say I come from the business, and then I start focusing in a center of expertise, which at the beginning was talent acquisition. It was very interesting because through talent acquisition, I need to say that I used to hate marketing when I was, in college. However, for some reason now I love marketing because employer branding is a lot about marketing, and I find like a new channel where I can go through. So my major is in psychology. So I think that one of the things that I enjoy the most is really being mindful about the workplace, really making sure that we understand, or that I understand, group dynamics. And once you have that, both things, then you are able to implement programs that make sense for the company. So saying that, PVH is an apparel company, global apparel company. We are based here in New York. We have around 40 different offices around the globe. We market iconic brands such as Calvin Klein, Tommy Hilfiger. I will invite the audience to go to YouTube and see the video. I won't do it right now because of the time. But we have also ISO, Speedo. We recently acquired True & Co. And we basically have a formula when we have been growing through acquisitions, which is a very important point on our company. So we have 5 strategic priorities that cross around our globe. We, as I say, we drive the business through acquisitions. We expand our markets. We invest in people. We invest in making sure that everybody has the best thing to bring their best to their work and really achieve the goals of the goals of the company. We have a strong strategy around developing people, and I think that is very tied to the subject that we are gonna talk about. And we need to generate cash, obviously, to make sure to continue investing in people and investing in our brands. One of the things that we have very clear as a company is that yes, we grow through acquiring, but part of our values is it's in our core. We know that we cannot grow our business if we don't value the individuality of all the associates that work with us. We collaborate, and we are very passionate about the way that we collaborate through business, through countries, through the different brands that we have. We have people that really are passionate about what they do. We always thinking about doing the right thing. And one thing that is very important is that we as associates, we really are accountable to take ownership of the things that we do. So that's very important. Talking about unconscious bias, which is the subject that I'm going to talk about, I think that first and most important is that I'm not part of the IND team. However, through this collaboration, we work together, but that's an important thing. And I would like to show something that is very important, which is how IND it's in the core of our values. So I will ask the team if you can show us the second video that I have, if you can play it.
The world around us is changing dramatically. Demographics are changing with our consumer and our associate populations. We are more ethnically diverse. We're more culturally diverse.
Diversity keeps PVH ahead of the fashion curve. It helps us understand our consumers and translate what they like into products that are right for them. A diverse and effective workforce is made up of a rich tapestry of people, different ages, genders, cultures, and life experiences. But diversity alone is not enough to be our best. To thrive, we must cultivate an inclusive work environment. When we focus on inclusion, diversity grows because we don't leave anyone out. Building upon our core values, our goal is to create an inclusive environment where every individual is valued, where different ideas, backgrounds, and perspectives are brought together to drive our business forward. Changing how we work today will mean success tomorrow. To do this, we must be consciously aware of how we interact and support one another, embracing views and backgrounds that may be different from our own.
I believe PVH is an inclusive culture where everyone is valued and can be themselves. Embracing inclusion and diversity is vital to our success, and I know I can count on you.
So in PVH, we have an inclusion and diversity strategic framework. It's always aligned to our core values. But I think that the most important thing to stress right here is that we have three main pillars. We have the talent practices, education, and BRGs as part of the pillars of our inclusion and diversity framework. Our PVH University is the one-stop place where you go to find all the resources that you can use to develop yourself within the company and your career at PVH. But we have a specific academy that's inclusion and diversity, and that's where our program around unconscious bias is embedded. How our education approach looks like. We have onboarding, we have the Inclusion and Diversity Academy, we have leadership programs and speaker series. But basically, in the Inclusion and Diversity Academy, we have three main topics, or three main courses that we encourage people to go through. One is confronting unconscious bias, sweating in small stuff, and generations at the workplace, which we think that the three of them sum a complete framework. I think that one of the important things that we have at PVH is that we enroll or we engage with Cook Ross, which he's a leader in unconscious bias. But I think that the most important thing here is that it started from the top. Our CEO really embraced the belief. I wouldn't say the project, because I think it's something that as PVH we have really in our blood, really we breathe it every single day. So it was very important having our CEO kicking off every single course that we have. It was very important because we start from the beginning. He was present in every single course. There were around 14 courses with all our leaders. He was there really saying, this is important for us, and this is important for us to make sure that we achieve our goals. And that had a major impact in our workforce. Once we finish, let's say, with the first level of the company, we start cascading the process, and really the feedback that we have received, it's not about we are just going and taking a course, it's really having our leaders modeling what we believe in. And that was very, I think it was very powerful. We started with North America. After the success in North America, we start going through Europe and Asia. Today, we have over 1,200 US leaders that have complied the course. Now it's available to all associates. We have the online course, or we have a webinar also on demand on PVH University. It is required, and I think that it depends on the culture of the companies. A lot of companies don't have this as a required thing. What I will say, we have it as a required course for everybody. However, it's part of our culture. I mean, people go because they want to learn. It's part of about learning how a culture looks like. And again, we always have senior people promoting and sponsoring the course. That makes people embracing and engaging into the course. The feedback that we have received has been very strong, and we're currently, as I said, rolling out this in Europe and Asia. We had 2 years ago, we were out of 150 organizations. PVH was the second place in the best use of classroom and traditional training category for confronting unconscious bias at the LEAD Awards. And this is an initiative that continues to run and happening around the company. So in terms of the time, I will stop there just to have a couple of minutes for questions, if you have some.
So I think what people are interested in, because all of you talked about engaging senior leaders in this and holding accountable. Brandon, you were very specific with your senior leader saying, I hold myself accountable, I hold my team accountable. What are the metrics in place, or what are the systems in place to give visibility to this so that when somebody does come in, they're experiencing the kind of inclusion that you're advertising as part of your culture?
Well, when you talk about metrics, so I guess let me take a step back and just share.
Let me just reframe that. Not necessarily metrics, but feedback loop.
Got it. So it's multifaceted, right? So we know for sure two things are happening. When folks exit our organization, we know we're getting data around what was your experience, right? And so that's largely leading some of this work. It's informing why we need to do this work, first and foremost. On the front end, as we acquire talent, we're also being extremely transparent on where we have gaps around the data, specifically around placement within our organization. So for example, Monica was interviewing for a VP role within our organization, SVP role within our organization. Largely we would speak about, or would share with you, what are those challenges around, specifically around diversity. Our organization has become so aware and comfortable sharing some of that language. It's not intended to be a deterrent of anything. If anything, it's meant to be a challenge to said person to help us be a part of this war. Hopefully that answers your question.
You did. Monica, you faced the same challenge. Manny was very clear that this was important to the culture. But there's one thing about saying it, there's another thing about living it, and having somebody say, well, actually, when I look around this room, I don't see all the people that we need to see in the room. How are leaders responding to the reality of implementing it?
I think that at PVH we have this part of our value, which is, individuality and be you. So I really think that we live it. Like, I maybe have my own experience around that, but I think that people really go into it when you see people, our leaders, walking the talk, because we really walk the talk. You see Manny over there. I think that PVH, we are very lucky inside because a lot, not to say every people initiative is sponsored by a leadership. It's very interesting but whatever you go around talent management, HR, when we have a big initiative, you have someone in the leadership team, whatever in Asia, in Europe, in the United States, you have someone sponsoring it. So that's where you show that you care about that. And I think I've seen this all the time. In every single initiative, you have someone sponsoring this. That may be for marketing, that may be for sales, that it's not necessarily only HR sponsoring these things. I think it's management, the leadership management sponsoring these initiatives, which make a lot of sense and make people really believe that this is important, this is real.
Super, super. Unfortunately, I'm being told that we're out of time. Stacy, thank you so much for sharing your story. Brandon, Monica, this is terrific work. And it's exciting to see how you're integrating it with your brand. In the videos, you can really tell how you're integrating this with your target audiences, with who you are. You get a really great sense of the culture in all of these cases. I would like to leave all of you who've joined us with a few resources yourself. Encourage you to go to our website and take advantage of the resources on the DNA of engagement. This year's research was on moments that matter throughout the employee lifecycle and how important those are. We have a webcast coming up next month on rethinking succession planning, preparing for an uncertain future. Obviously, diversity and inclusion is a big piece of that. And would encourage you to save the date for our 5th annual Talent Acquisition Conference set for October 2nd and 3rd in later this year at the Westin, New York. You can read about the highlights, and please go to our website to register for that. If you would please stay on, we will have a survey, I think, for you all, but we certainly encourage you to share these insights, download the presentations, and all of our presenters have been very generous in their willingness to share and interact. If you have questions, please give them to us. We're happy to be the interface to help connect you. Hope you all have a great day, and we look forward to having you again at one of our webcasts.